Number 1. This story is about a sick and twisted man that I'd met online when I was 18 and ended up dating. He was jealous, controlling, abusive in every possible way, and was filled with sadistic tendencies and rage. His name was Oscar. I had tried to leave Oscar many times. I wasn't happy. In fact, I was in a constant state of panic and was absolutely miserable in the relationship that had lasted just a year. Each attempt to leave him was met with threats to hurt me and my family, physically dragging me back, sexually assaulting and purposely trying to impregnate me, threatening to commit suicide, or constant stalking and harassment until I surrendered. Finally, I had enough and decided I wasn't going back no matter what he did. He called my job nonstop and got me in major trouble, and did the same at my house, prompting me to unplug the phone line. He texted me to say that he promised he was going to kill himself if I didn't go back to him. Instead of caving though, I called his mom at work and told her. She got a hold of him and said I must have misunderstood because he was clearly fine. I felt I'd done all that I could do, and I told him I'd call the police the next time he said something like that to have them go check on him. The next day, I got a call on my cell from Oscar. I rejected it. He called again, and I yet again rejected it. Then I heard the loud exhaust on his car outside while I looked down at my phone and saw him calling again. I let it go to my voicemail while I peeked through the blinds to check if I had truly heard his car, as I'd started to falsely hear it sometimes out of paranoia. But this time he was indeed out in front of my house. My phone started ringing again and I wanted him to stop. I answered it. He told me to come outside. "I don't want to see you," I said.
"Just come outside for a few minutes, please,"
Oscar said, making a huge effort to sound pleasant. "I told you to stop calling me and you show up at my house? Why can't you respect my wishes?" I asked, knowing the question wouldn't be addressed.
"I just felt bad about how everything went down, and I wanted to give you something I made for you before you broke up with me. Just come outside for a few minutes so I can apologize, then I'll go away and you'll never hear from me ever again,"
Oscar pleaded. "I don't know. I don't trust you," I told him, looking at him sitting in his car through the living room window.
"I promise,"
he said, kind of convincingly.
"I drove all the way here to give you what I made and just have a proper goodbye."
In hindsight, I should have called BS on all of that immediately, but I was young and still way too controlled by my need to not hurt other people's feelings. I felt bad that he'd driven the 40 minutes to my house with something he made for me to just refuse to come out. "Fine, only a few minutes," I stated firmly. "And you promise you're not going to try to beg me back?" He promised, and I went outside. I opened the passenger side door and sat down in the seat, leaving the door wide open. He commented that I must think he's going to kidnap me, trying to pass it off like a joke. I told him I just wanted the extra leg room. He had a bouquet of flowers and some cases of DVDs that he'd burned for me for all of the seasons of my favorite TV show. We talked for a minute when my cell phone rang. I shouldn't have picked it up knowing it was a guy from my job, but I was an idiot. I answered it and talked to the guy for less than 30 seconds. Oscar could hear it was a man's voice. I could instantly tell when I saw his head snap to attention in my peripheral vision. When I hung up, Oscar looked at me with fury in his eyes, and he asked me some questions about the caller that I can't even recall now. Before I could reply to whatever he asked, he had slammed on the accelerator and was flying down the street with my door still open. I instinctively pulled my legs into the vehicle and started screaming for him to stop. He didn't seem to even be hearing me. I tried to jump out when he started to slow down at intersections, and seeing this, he grabbed my clothes with his hand to hold me in and started making sharp left turns through the neighborhood to force my door to swing shut. Once that was accomplished, I tried to open the door again, and he kept hitting the automatic locks to stop me, and was consistently increasing his speed to ensure any leap from the car would be dangerous. By now it was dark outside. He was speeding through my town double the speed limit. I was hoping a police officer would see this and start tailing him and pull him over, but apparently he'd gone unseen. He reached the freeway and I started really panicking. He would be able to go even faster here and fast track me wherever he planned to take me. It took maybe 3 minutes to get to the freeway at the speed he was going, all of which I spent trying to get out of the vehicle. Once he was on the freeway, he was going over 100 miles per hour. I kept looking at the speedometer. It was dark outside, and that was much too fast to jump from a moving car on the freeway, with other cars driving at high speeds and unable to see me. I still had my phone, so I tried to dial 911. I pressed the numbers with my hand shoved down the side of the seat by my window, away from Oscar. But he saw what I was doing and started swerving all over the road while trying to grab my phone from me. I still don't really know how he managed to get it away from me because every ounce of my being was trying to hold on. He took it, rolled down his window, and threw it out. Rolling his window back up, he flatly stated,
"If I can't have you, then no one will."
That sentence made my heart sink. I felt like I was in a Lifetime movie. Oscar was possessed by his need to possess me, and I was trapped. This is when the grim reality started to really set in. He was out of control and I was out of options. I started screaming for help and pounding on the windows, but Oscar had the tint on those windows so dark that I probably wouldn't have even been seen if it wasn't dark outside. I watched as the people in each car we passed remained blissfully unaware of the chaos going on in the car I was being kidnapped in. I was feeling very defeated, but was running through all the possibilities of how this could go, over and over in my mind, trying to figure out how to survive. I decided to stop fighting and acting afraid because the only way I saw myself making out of this alive was by feeding into Oscar's delusional state. I had no other weapons or means of escape at my disposal, so I decided on psychological warfare. Oscar had this friend named Jose that he'd gotten exceedingly close to over the course of our relationship. After a time, it was revealed to me in confidence that Jose had fled from Puerto Rico, supposedly on the run for murder. I saw that Oscar was taking the necessary freeway interchanges to get to Jose's place, and knew that even if his friend hadn't really been wanted for murder, he was the type of guy who would do anything for Oscar without moral restriction. Jose and I got along okay, but I knew he'd have no loyalty to me whatsoever. He was nice to me as long as I was an extension of Oscar. I had to act quickly. I proceeded to tell Oscar that I loved him and I wished we could be together, but that I didn't see how it could ever work when things like what he was doing right now proved that he never cared about what I wanted. I hadn't necessarily cited that as a reason for wanting out of the relationship before, as it was much more complex than that, but I was hoping it was enough to offer him hope in his state of desperation. I told him I had been considering giving him another chance when I saw the flowers and DVDs, but now that he was refusing to take me home when I asked him to, I started to second guess things. Oscar got off the freeway on Jose's exit, and I started trying to formulate a plan for when the car stopped. I knew Jose had neighbors close by, and I decided I was going to run as fast as I could and scream at the top of my lungs. I was trying to keep Oscar's mind preoccupied in the meantime though, so that he wouldn't think to call Jose and give him a heads up. They usually spoke to each other in Spanish, so I would have no idea what was even said. Oscar told me that he did care about what I wanted, and he asked if he still had a chance with me if he turned around right now. In an effort not to expose myself with an overly enthusiastic reply, I hesitated a bit and said that I thought we could probably work it out, and this would be a good place to start. Oscar looped around and got back on the freeway, headed in the opposite direction, back towards my house. The rest of the ride was tense because Oscar was normally so perceptive, and I didn't want to reveal myself and end up back in the line of fire. I can't recall what was said on the commute back, but I opted to talk about regular everyday things I normally say to him in casual conversation. When we got back to my house and he let me open my door and didn't stop me from leaving, I could finally breathe. I got out, taking the flowers and DVDs with me, and waved him before walking into my house. I walked straight to the garbage bin and threw it all in the trash, and then collapsed on my couch, shaking violently, but ultimately so grateful to have made it home. The next day, I went to the police station and filed a restraining order against him. Within a few years, he would be jailed for other appalling crimes and sentenced to 60 years. Until I found that out, I never truly felt safe. He's definitely where he belongs. So to that psychopath Oscar that likely was going to kill me, I really hope I never see you for the rest of my life. Number 2. This may well be the worst way to tell your parents you're gay. I do not recommend. My sophomore year of high school, I was on the cast and costume crew for our fall play. One of my castmates/crewmates was a really cute guy. His name was Mark. He always wore skinny jeans, who I learned from a mutual friend was bisexual. So I started flirting with him, looking for opportunities to hang out, sending him memes, basically everything a closeted nerd could do. After about 3 months of flirting, hanging out, and growing gradually more affectionate, I asked him out on the last day of our play. He said yes. Well, the issue? My mother is a very conservative Christian, and although she was tolerant of gay people, I knew she'd never allow me to have a boyfriend while I lived with her. So we had to hide our relationship, which early on wasn't too bad. We'd go to the movies or his house and just hang out. But everything started going downhill the first time we had sex. He started getting really demanding about hanging out, and by demanding about hanging out, I mean he was never not horny and frustrated. I was cool with it at first cause, well, sex, but after a while I was getting pissed about it. Working a relationship around my mom was difficult, and my generally asocial nature was not at all enjoying having to leave the house so often. I tried to talk to Mark about it and he seemed understanding for like a week. Then he started getting nasty. He'd avoid me at school only to text me to insult me and act insanely jealous of my friends. Eventually I had enough and I dumped him in July after 9 months over text while I was in Florida. Look, I was 16, don't judge me. Anyway, he lost it. He blew up my phone daily for about a week, then he started acting normal like we were friends. That lasted another month and we got back to school. Unfortunately, while we were dating, we had tried to coordinate our schedules, so now we had 4 out of 7 classes with each other. At first, he seemed okay. Then he started staring at me. Then he started texting me again with sad messages. I figured he was done being mean to me and I started being nice to him again. Big mistake. He started getting attached again. He would try to integrate himself every time I went out with my friends. He would beg me to take him back. I would say no and explain again why we couldn't be together. Around October, he started getting bad, like 1 a.m. texts about swallowing a whole bottle of melatonin bad. In hindsight, I should have gone to the authorities, but I was terrified that doing so would lead to my mom finding out. So I tried to handle it myself. Bad idea. He got worse. He threatened to kill himself regularly and tried to turn my friends against me. The worst day thus far came when we were building our homecoming float for drama club. I was hanging out and casually flirt bantering with 2 of my male friends, Isaac and Caleb, who are both straight. Mark saw this, stood up from where he'd been painting, and walked out in a hurry. A few minutes later, a freshman girl walked in asking me where Mark was going. He said that I'd know. I found out later he'd driven himself to the ER to get counseling. I was happy, thinking he'd get some help, but I had no damn clue how obsessed he was. I came home from rehearsal one day to find his car parked up my street and Mark walking towards it from my house. My mom was on the porch waving bye to him. Apparently he'd been in the neighborhood and thought to drop by. Just for some background, I am the eldest of 7 boys. My youngest brothers were 2 years old and 6 months in the womb during this. My mom raised us primarily by herself. Dad's a dirtbag, stepdad was deployed through his ordeal. She is an honest 6 feet tall, about half that wide, and can easily sling me across her shoulders. I'm 6'3" and 180 pounds. She is also the best shot with a pistol I've ever seen by far. Not someone Mark, who's 5'4", 120 pounds soaking wet, would want to tangle with, even while she was heavily pregnant. I told her we did hang out, just not as much. She accepted this and we went about our days. For a week, everything was okay, and then I came home from rehearsal. Mark's car was parked up the street again and he was sitting on our porch with my mother, who had my baby brother on her lap. She saw me get out of the car and gave me a come hither crook of the finger. Slowly, I walked up to the porch. It turned out Mark had told her everything. Everything. Our whole relationship, but with me as the abuser and himself as the victim. She started to lay into me, then dismissed Mark, who went back to his car snickering. After she was done ranting, I calmly told her my side of the story. Fortunately, she believed me, but she was still pissed, so I was grounded, which pales in comparison to what happened that night. Our house is old and crappy. The windows can easily be jiggled open from the outside, even when they're locked. Mark knew this since I used it to my advantage many times when sneaking out. And my mom's room where she and my 2-year-old brother slept is right across the hall from mine, facing the backyard. Mine faces the street. That night I woke up around 2 a.m. because I was cold. After I got my glasses on, I saw why. My window was open. I whipped around searching for whoever did it. My bedroom door was open as well. As I got up, I heard the sound of my mom's bedroom door quietly closing. I raced as quietly as possible to the door, and then I heard something that stopped my heart. A metallic click, like a gun being cocked. I flew across the hall and threw my mom's door open. The lights were on. Mark was crouched in the corner, a cleaver in hand. My brother was sound asleep. And my mom, you ask? Well, my mom was calmly sitting on the bed, glasses on, Harry Potter book in her lap, 10mm pistol in her hands pointed directly at Mark, who was shaking and sobbing. She told him to shut up before he woke the baby and directed me to call the cops so she could keep an eye on him. Mark was taken into custody, but my mom declined to press charges on the condition that Mark move out to Arizona with his dad instead of staying in Missouri with his mom, which he did. From that point on, I hardly saw him unless he was Snapchatting my friends begging to talk to me. His typical standard crap. Mark, for your safety, I really hope me or my family never have to see you ever again. Number 3. When I was 23 years old, I was renting my first place when my ex-girlfriend reached out to me. We dated for X amount of months in high school. It's been over 10 years since high school and I can't remember how long it was. It just went badly because I was kind of a douchebag and started talking to another girl. Anyway, my ex said she was over what happened when we were teenagers and was willing to give it another shot. So we have a date and then several dates and things are doing really well. A month into our relationship, one night I'm at work on a late shift and she calls me saying she had gotten into an argument with her mother. They had gotten into some sort of domestic dispute about something and she got slapped and she needed to cool off at my place. I get home and turns out she was moving in. I'm pretty laid back and I wanted help with the rent anyways, so I'm somewhat okay with it. I mean, I knew I was walking into a snake pit, but I had no idea it was going to be a viper pit. So we lived together for a whopping 2 months when things take a turn. She starts telling me she's insecure about me talking to other girls, and then that changes to watching porn as well, which didn't work because I have control issues. We start fighting a lot, sometimes all night long. She starts cutting herself and saying it was all my fault and ends up getting a tetanus. I start constantly getting late phone calls asking where I am at work and who I'm with. I work late hours at an ambulance service. Things come to a head one night when Crazy X tries to tell me looking at porn is the same thing as beating her. She starts screaming at me and bringing up all the cutting and doctor visits claiming it's all my fault. I get fed up and tell her to move out. This pushes her off the deep end. She grabs my gun that I keep for self-defense and tells me that she's going to kill herself. I call the police and she leaves shortly afterwards after she throws my loaded handgun outside. I think to myself, yay, it's finally over. But it wasn't yet. So a few days go by without incident. Crazy X texts me saying she needs to give me her house key. I tell her no and to just throw it away, but no. She drives to my house anyway, leaves the key, and tapes a note to my door saying I'm mentally ill and I need help, and all this crap about how she forgives me and blah blah blah. I stopped reading it after the I need help part, and she kept texting me and asking if I read it. Even going as far as blaming her behavior on her pregnancy, saying that the baby is mine but she lost it due to stress. So here I am years down the road, now married with a wonderful 2-year-old hellion with no regrets of leaving the Crazy X. I hope wherever she is, my Crazy X is doing okay, but I really never want to see her again. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you have your own scary story that you'd like to share with me, make sure you send that to my email, at southerncannibal@gmail.com. I'm always looking for more scary stories to bring to the channel. And before I bring this video to a close, I'd like to shout out all of my $5 or more patrons, as well as my $3 or more patrons featured on screen. Shout out to Babe Lincoln, Beth A, Kate E, Celeste S, Ellie S, Heather B, Howard R, Jacqueline W, Jazzy G, Jess, Jonathan C, Carrie F, Lori J, Lindsay S, Matthew B, Random Randy, Steph L, Tammy S, Terry H, and Emily W. Thank you all so much for supporting me on Patreon. And if any of you would also like to join these awesome people and also get a shout out and some other cool perks, be sure to head over to my Patreon at patreon.com/southerncannibal. And once again, if you have your own story you'd like to send me, that's southerncannibal@gmail.com. Have a good one, everyone. And remember to always stay